Hey guys, welcome back to the Philfak Academy of Linguistic Analysis, and today we've got a very special episode. We're going to compare a Western front page with an Asian front page, which is always exciting, like two different, continents, or two different realities, or two different histories or cultures, just different. It's quite interesting. And we're also going to have a look at the difference between, like, let's say, an emotional picture and an informative picture. So before we dive into the two newspapers, let's have a little talk about what I mean by informative picture. So here, this has got nothing to do with the news. This is about scaling a company from a very small company to a massive company. And why is this an informative picture? Because it's a picture that gives us information, it's got statistics, it tends towards trying to be objective and not subjective. You might feel emotions when you look at it, but the aim is not so much to give you emotions as to give you information, hence informative. Okay, so we're going to have a look at an informative picture now, a slightly different type of informative picture, maybe some more emotions there. Okay, so this is the informative picture that was on the front page of one of these two newspapers. I was going to ask you, can you guess, is it the Asian one or the Western one? But it's in English. So I think you can guess it's not the Asian one, unfortunately. That's not going to work. But you can see it's informative because it's a map. I mean, a map gives us information about geographic features, topographic features, and things like that. And so what information do we get? We get that there's a landmass here called Russia, and that there's a landmass here called Ukraine. And then this is obviously a military map, and so it's got arrows coming into particular places. And quite often those arrows themselves are quite informative because they're of different sizes. So we can see here that the longer arrows would indicate longer movements, and the shorter arrows would indicate short movements. Quite logical, really. So we can see, basically, very quickly, we get the information about movements here, movements of military forces in one country area, coming in from another one. Yet that arrow is coming in from Russia. But interesting enough, a lot of the arrows are entirely within the Ukraine. Okay, so that's informative, and it's always worth thinking about what other similar informative pictures you've seen. And so when I saw this, I thought of a similar map with arrows, one that really struck me once, and I just want to show it to you. It's not from what's been happening recently. It's from quite a few years ago. But let's compare this informative map with the next one. Okay, so I think the guessing game's going to work here with this informative map without reading too many things. Again, this is about movements of soldiers and military machines from one country into another country, or from one area into another area. Without looking at it in too much detail, can you instantly recognize what area it is of the world, and then guess what time period it comes from? Any guesses? Have a little bit of a closer look. You can see here Harbin. You can see here Korea. You can see here Mongolia interior. So if you know your geography, you've probably guessed already that this is about the Asian part of Russia, the far east of Russia, where it comes into contact with China. And then you probably realize that this is from World War II, when the Soviet forces moved into the Japanese-controlled territory, mostly within China, I think, at that stage, I don't know. And basically crush those forces. So straight away, like, it is informative as well, but I don't know, when I first saw this picture, I just felt like this awe and horror as well. Like, just like the significance of those arrows and what they represent is just scary. It really is just scary, like, thinking about that type of movement. And you can see that the arrows are quite thick. Like, if you look at this one, it's incredibly thick there. If we compare it to the arrows in the other map that's about the Ukraine-Russia conflict, crisis, situation, invasion, war, we can see that the arrows, are quite small, and pink with some blue. If you didn't know what was happening, it wouldn't kind of make you feel negative. But coming back to the other one about the Soviet-Japan clash, that's just like, my goodness me. First of all, like, how many arrows there are, the thickness of the arrows. If you look at this one here, it's like this quadruple-headed dragon that comes storming in and then splits its heads around to breathe fire on all of the forces there and pushes all the way down to the sea, like smashes us way through. And so you can see that there's very little area. I'll try and put it here. There's very little area that isn't really affected by those arrows, like that little area in there. Everywhere else in this landmass has just been arrowed, like smashed by arrowed. And when we come back to the situation at the moment in the Ukraine, we can see that the arrow situation in this map, and this is from a few days ago, maybe it's changed. Like I said, we're not trying to establish what's really happening right now, what the news is, what the facts are. We're just comparing how maps can present a different idea of military movements. You can kind of see here that the arrows do tend to occupy, I don't know what those arrows there mean. Yeah, I'll assume that it means something. Yeah, so there's quite a larger chunk there that doesn't seem to be affected by the arrows. They do seem to be going around a bit. So you can see that, it's fairly informative. Now, we don't know if it's true. Maybe in reality, there's like some massive arrow that's going down there that nobody's talking about. Yeah, maybe that arrow is a bit longer. Yeah, we don't know the full details because we don't work in military intelligence. But yeah, it's interesting how this provides us with information. And obviously, because it's connected with war, you can feel emotion, like, oh, that's horrible, or oh, wow, how cool is that an army's crushing through somewhere. But generally speaking, it's informative. Same front page, same day, and this is obviously the Western newspaper. Where did they put it on the front page? Like, was it the main picture? Okay, so this is the front page, and you can see there's the map to the right. So that informative picture is there, but it is kind of in the background in that it's smaller, it's to the right. The central one, again, is not informational. Why would I say it's not informational? Because, you can see that it's Mykolaiv in Ukraine, and you can see the person who took the picture and who they took it for. But apart from the location, Mykolaiv, Ukraine, you can't really get a lot of larger scale information about what's happening. You can see that there are 2 firemen. So there was obviously a fire, but were there only 2 firemen there? Were there 50? They look to be something like apples there. Was this a fire in a warehouse, like a fruit warehouse? Was it a fire in a shop? Was it like a small fire? Was it a massive fire? Was it a fire from a bomb, an incendiary bomb like napalm? Was it a fire just because of an electricity cut? So we don't really get the details, but we do kind of get the emotions. Like, it's dark. Let's zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so it's really dark. Like, you've got no detail up here in the corner because of the smoke. You do have the light coming through. You've got these charred out six. This is basically destruction there. You can see everything bent and warped. So generally looking quite dark and pessimistic. And that person's actually, that firefighter is still like trying to put out the fire, which is quite interesting. That person's still, I don't know, I'm sorry guys, public servants, one person working, the other person standing there, not doing much. So, yeah, we can assume that the fire's not raging at the current moment. Otherwise, that person's pretty calm. But yeah, like that's what I would call a more emotional picture. It's front and center. And it kind of creates the emotions, and it matches the context of what's been happening or what's been being reported in this newspaper. And then perhaps that would affect how you perceive this one, because you would associate now those little arrows with that type of picture. So yeah, I think that would increase the emotional content of that informative map because of its location right next to this picture. Okay, so let's quickly have a linguistic analysis of the title. Like that one there, it's pretty negative. Death and destruction because of fire is always bad. But you can't see the fire. You can't see big scale. I'll give it a 3. U.S. and Western companies, and again we see the lack of complexity in the sentences now in the title of the New York Times. Obviously, I don't check every headline every day, every hour, but again, you've got subject and subject, and then a simple verb, and then the noun object isolation, and again we've got that nationality adjective, connecting this isolation, which is a negative concept, with the idea of Russia and everything Russian. And US and Western companies, obviously quite interesting. The West, which Western companies? Is it Spanish companies, Greek companies? Are Korean companies Western companies? We don't know. It doesn't matter because it's the US and Western companies, yeah. And then, so look, 3, I don't know, increase Russia's isolation. It's negative, but it's not, it's not that bad. It's more about the positive action of the Western countries rather than creating, it does create something negative. I'll give it a 2. Okay, so 5 times 4, that's a 20. I don't know, what would you give it? Like, do you think that headline is more negative than more emotionally charged than a 2? Do you think the picture is going into reptilian, that it's making you feel really angry or really depressed? If it is doing that, then maybe you want to stop. But, would you give it a high mark there? Then we've got millions of Ukrainians trapped. Okay, so now we see how this picture really creates this emotion like trapped. They're trapped in the fire. They're trapped in the wreckage. They're trapped in the bombs. Yeah. So as Moscow continues attacks. So you look at it and think, well, millions of Ukrainians killed will be much, much worse. They're trapped. Yeah. But the millions creates a lot of negativity. So I'll give that a 5. Maybe no, it's got to be more than a 5. I'll give it a 7. Moscow continues. And again, we've got Moscow. So it's not attacks continue, it's Moscow. So we've got this kind of political level here, Russia, Moscow. I had a little bit of a game before, like Putin was in the front page of the New York Times, boom, 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 in the early days of the invasion. But then he has disappeared. So a quick Putin spot, you guys can press pause now and look if you want, but a quick scan tells me that again, the word Putin is not here at all. So again, Putin's not there, and he was there in the New York Times. In the English version, and when we looked last time at the New York Times, he wasn't in the English version, but he was everywhere in the New York Times Chinese version. So interesting to see how the kind of the enforcer or actor or implementer or initiator of these actions, like attacks, continues attacks. Is it Putin? Is it Moscow? Is it Russia? Is it Russian forces? Is it the US and Western forces? Yep. Okay, we were not going to go big into the details there. Long symbols of West, pause operations, and nothing really there, that's quite factual. Long symbols of West in Russia. Biden calls Russian oil ban a blow to Putin's war machine. That's beautiful. So there is a Putin there, Putin's war machine. One Putin, but nothing in there. So there's one Putin there. Not a lot compared to before, but it's there. Okay, so, a blow to Putin's war machine. It's got very strong language. Now, in the second article we're going to look at today, we're actually going to come back to this topic. So I'll come back to that a little bit later. So overall, I don't know, that was a 7, there's a 0. Let's say it's a 3. So 23, about this topic. It's emotional, but it's not reptilian at that 23, which does seem to match the New York Times. The kind of more emotional going into reptilian, getting really angry or really sad or really depressed. That's more the Guardian and the Sydney Morning Herald. And again, just like the artistic nature of that photo. Well done, the New York Times. Good stuff. Okay, what about the second newspaper? Okay, so here's the front page of the second newspaper. Now, we're going to play a little guessing game. For some of you guys, it might be incredibly easy. For some of you guys, it might be a little bit difficult. Like, this is an Asian newspaper. It's obviously not European. It might be European-based Asian language, but it is from an Asian country. Which Asian country do you think it's from? Press pause. Have a little think about it if you want to. Well, the answer you can see is things like this. Right? You can see that they're characters. But at the same time, you can see that there are these funny little squiggles. That's an alphabet. And so if you see things that look like very complicated pictures, like characters, and at the same time you see very simple squiggles, like these ones here, then that means it's Japanese. That's how you can tell if it's Japanese. So this is a Japanese newspaper. According to the website that I found it on, this is the most read online newspaper in Japan. So straight away, look, honestly speaking, I don't know what that says. That little like box followed by the happy smiley face there. Can you see the little happy smiley face? Maybe I'll just reproduce it here. That's the little happy smiley face. Like down here, we can see a picture of the current American President Biden, and we can see that same little happy smiley face with the box. So I'm pretty sure that box is ba or beer, and then that little smiley face is probably der. or something like that. So it's about Biden. Okay, this one I know from Chinese is demands. So it's Biden making demands, but I don't know what that is. G20, geez, it's difficult. Like, first of all, the picture, let's give it a 0. It's just doing nothing. And about that title, I can't understand it. Unfortunately not. So, look, I don't know. It's got Biden in it. Let's give it a 1. Okay, so all upper 5. But you can see the structure's quite different. They kind of cut off the top half. And then we see a main story up the top. But it doesn't have that kind of central dominance that we saw here in the New York Times, where that centerpiece picture with the big title, it really dominates. With the Japanese one, it seems to be a bit more evenly divided. So I think even multiplying it by 5 would be a mistake. I'm going to multiply it by 3. Obviously in Japanese culture, maybe that really stands out. I don't know, cross-cultural communication, it's a fascinating, intriguing subject. But I'll give it all up. I'll give it a 0, I'll give it a 1, multiply by 3, that's a 3. So we can see straight away that the Japanese front page is going to be, this is the same day as the New York Times, it's going to be nothing like the New York Times in terms of the scale the market's going to get, and something about Biden here. And this one here is about the oil ban that we saw in the New York Times. So just to reference it in English first. Biden calls Russian oil ban a blow to Putin's war machine. So it's the same story. It's about America banning Russian oil. And you can see here Biden calls Russian oil ban a blow. So very emotional, very strong, to Putin's war machine. So I'll give it like a 6. That's really going into reptilian, that one there. What about the Japanese one? The same topic, the same story. Well, when you click on it, you get this picture here. You get that title up the top. And this one I did translate. Let's have a look at the translation. Okay, so I just chucked this into Google Translate, and that is the title there. So what's the translation? That's the translation, and it's pretty good. Like, Google Translate is just getting better and better. It used to have difficulty with Japanese, Korean, those types of languages, real problems because of word order. But that algorithm, those robots are just getting better and better and better. So Russia's crude oil embargo, additional sanctions for US, from the US side, will come into effect on the same day. UK will be suspended by the end of the year. And so when it comes to emotions there's nothing. Come into effect is a legal, official term, additional sanctions, suspended by the end of the year. I'll give it a 0. It gets a 0. The Japanese title for the same article comes out as a 0. It's quite informative. Now, obviously, there might be a little bit lost in translation, that great film about 2 people in Japan. There might be something lost in translation. Maybe for the Japanese audience, this is incredibly emotional. But I'm going to give it a 0. If we compare that idea of come into effect ban, like what was the ban doing in the New York Times, according to Biden? The ban was a blow. It was a blow. So the metaphor of like that war machine metaphor, very metaphoric, very emotional. The Japanese one, very rational, calm, and logical. Now, if we zoom out a little bit and we have a look at the entire article, very quickly you'll notice that a bit lower, there's another non-emotional picture, but an informative picture in the form of a pie graph. So we're going to play the guessing game again. What information is the pie graph giving? Now, if you remember, there's the box and there's a little smiley face with that squiggle at the end of it. Do you remember what that means? Biden, or maybe it means Bidenu. But we can see it's about Biden, and then I'll tell you what the title is. It is about the oil exports. It's about oil exports. Or is that Biden? Maybe it's Russia. Wow, I might have that wrong. Geez, sorry guys, I'm not going to give you a lot of information to help you with this one. But it is about oil exports. No, that actually might be Russia. Wow. Yeah, sorry guys, I completely misinformed you on that one. Lucky I'm not writing the news. Okay, so that isn't Biden. That's Russia. Okay, so this is about Russian oil production export rates. Okay, so this is obviously about Russia exporting to different countries. So we can see that these squiggles, these kanji or characters, they represent 53.5% of where Russia's oil exports go. This one here is 27%, 6.4, 2.8, 2.3, and the rest. So very informative. Bang, 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 bang. We find out, okay, what are the possible economic consequences for Russia as a result of this blow to Putin's war machine. So, you know, if this one here at 53%, if that's America, right, and they're going to just stop it like now, like, you know, Russia's gone. You know, the economy of Russia is just going to absolutely collapse. If it's this one here, that's going to like really bad news. You're going to be massive recession very quickly, but you probably won't have a complete economic collapse. This one here, it's going to be pretty bad. This one here, they're going to feel it a little bit. It's not going to be nice, but you know, things will keep going along. Same story for this one here. So if you remember, it was Biden's America that was going to deliver this blow, and this one is America there. That's the same characters in Chinese, so don't worry, I'm not misinforming you here. That one there's Japan. The key market here for Russian oil exports, according to this graph, is the European Union, and after that, China. If you remember, it gave the information in the Japanese newspaper article about Britain doing the same thing, but by the end of the year, not right now. So it's interesting that when you see an informative article, you actually get information. You get some details. We're not going to, this video has been going on for 20 minutes, so we're not going to analyze the whole article in the New York Times, but I'll put a link in the description below. If you go into that and you read that article, I really advise you do it. Just pay attention to, let's say, emotional type language, like metaphors of blow and war machine, a bit. Here you can see it had struggled amid fears. There's a lot of emotional language. So, okay, guys. So I hope you enjoyed that today, and that, you know, as you move forward, looking at front pages of newspapers, you can start to think a little bit about, you know, how much information, pieces of detail am I getting here, versus how much emotionally charged feelings am I getting from the pictures and the words. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other, or you just want to focus on one and not the other. It's good to get both of them, and then compare them, and then just kind of think about, you know, why. We don't do that at the Philfak Academy. That's your job. But it is interesting, like, why is it that such a popular newspaper in America has all of this emotional charge? One of the most popular newspapers, online newspapers in Britain, is even more, as is the Sydney Morning Herald in Australia, even more. And you hop over to Japan, it's all quite calm. You know, maybe by their standards, what we saw today is not calm, because they used the word Russia. Maybe that makes it incredibly emotional for the Japanese. But enjoy looking into this yourselves into the future. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Have a great time. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.